So, it has been a while since I posted any long videos in this channel, but here I am. I was scrolling through Pinterest the other day and I found some cool looking stylized buildings like these where the roofs and the walls are made of sticks, and I've always wanted to make stylized buildings in Blender. So I used these images as references. I'll quickly show you how I made this particular artwork in Blender. Let's go. So jumping to Blender, I have this as my default scene, but if at all you have a cube like this, you can click on this cube and hit delete to remove it. And let's start by adding a plane. Let me rename it to roof, and with this selector let me switch to tab edit mode by pressing tab, or you can click on this and switch to edit mode. Let's start by adding a loop cut in the middle. For that you can press Ctrl plus R and click it again. With this edge selected, let's push this by using G and Z like this, so it looks like a roof. Something like this maybe looks good. And I'll also probably select all the vertices and scale it along the y-axis by pressing S and Y. Something like this looks good, I guess. Yeah. And I'll start separating these edges into their own meshes. So to select the edge, I'll go to the edge selection mode and right click on it, click separate and selection, and I'll do that for all the edges and separate it into their own meshes. With this I switch back to object mode and I'll start renaming these edges so it's easier for me to understand. I call this roof left, and we would need a duplicate of this edge. For now I'll duplicate it, and without moving my mouse I click on the screen, so I create a duplicate and rename it to roof right. I'll go ahead and hide the actual plane that we created, and I'll start renaming the other edges like this: wall right front, wall right back, and wall left back, and the last one wall left, oh no, wall left front. Yeah. With this I'll start subdividing these edges. Let me just first subdivide. Okay, let me first scale them along the y-axis, something like this, so it is a little bigger than the other edges, and click on the roof left first, and let me go to edit mode, switch back to the vertex select mode, and with these select both the vertices and subdivide them. We can subdivide it to probably number 25. So this subdivision is where we'll have the cube's instance, so a number like 25 sounds good to me. I'll enter 25 here. Yeah, this looks good, and I'll go ahead and duplicate this now by pressing Shift and D and a left click, and I'll rename this to roof right. Let me go ahead and do this for all the other edges as well. Starting from the wall right front, go to edit mode, right click and subdivide. For this let me subdivide to something around 22, or let me do 20, or 18 looks good. And let me select this edge, go ahead and subdivide to 22, and I'll go ahead and subdivide this edge to 18, similar to the other one that we did. And yeah, similar to the other one that we did. And since we have these two vertices that are intersecting with other edges. Let's go ahead and delete those vertices. We don't want any intersections, so we'll select this edge as well and remove these vertices. Actually, to remove the vertices, what you have to do is select the vertices, press X, you have this menu and click on vertices. With these vertices gone, let's subdivide the other three edges as well. Click on it, go to edit mode, right click, subdivide, and this to 18, and let's remove this vertex because it will be colliding with that edge. And with that done, let's go to this edge, subdivide, and set the number to 18, remove this vertex. This is the last edge, let's subdivide to 22. With every edge subdivided, we can start adding geometry nodes, but then let's add a cube that will instance in these edges. So I'll scale this cube in the Z and Y axis by using the side panel, which I got by pressing the N key on the keyboard. I'll scale it to something around 0.06 for now, or 0.05. Yeah, but I want the origin to be at the top, so I move this along the z-axis by -1, click on object, set origin to geometry. So with this, I hide this menu and let me select one of the edges to roof right and add a geometry node modifier. And click on new here, go to geometry nodes. I'll hide these two panels which I don't need. And let's start adding an instance on points node. Let's add it here. And we need an object info node to bring our cube into this geometry nodes. Let's pick this cube, join geometry to instance. We have this. I forgot to apply scale, so click on the cube and press Ctrl A to apply scale. Ctrl A and click on scale. With scale applied, I think we can still scale it a little more on the X and Y axis, so we don't see these gaps, to maybe 0.06, and apply scale again. This looks good. Let's go to the geometry nodes, and with this I'll probably go hide the cube, and the idea here is to randomize the scale along z-axis. So for that, I'll add a random value node and a map range node and a combined xyz node. So let's set the x and y values to 1, and since you're going to randomize the scale along z-axis, let me plug this into the map range and this one to z and this one to our scale node. So now we can see the z scale is randomized. With this, we can change this min max value, but before that, let's rotate it along the y axis so it matches this edge. I'll set it to -58. Yeah, this looks fine, and now we can start messing with the min and max value. So I adjust this min value such that it is at least this long, so the walls don't look like they're hanging out of nowhere. So I'll set these min values. You can experiment with these values, set it to whatever looks good for you. I'll change to something like this. And if at all you're not satisfied with this, you can also change the seed value in the random value node. I think this looks good. So this is the idea. And we also need a realize instances node here, and we can start duplicating it to the other edges. Let me click on the roof left, add another geometry node. Let's just select the one that we created and use this to duplicate it. And here just change the rotation to plus 58, and we have our roof. And we also have to address this intersections. So what we do is click on our instance cube and go to edit mode, select these two vertices, just move them a little so they don't collide, something like this, and bring it a little up so it aligns with the z-axis. Select every vertex in that cube, bring it up, it matches to something like this, and go to X-ray mode so it will be easier for you to move these vertices. Something like this looks good. And for the right roof, let's create a new instance cube like this. Duplicate the original cube, rotate it along z-axis by 180 degree, and let's go to the roof right geometry nodes and select this new cube that we created and reset the rotation to minus 58 and 0, and click on the actual cube and Control A to apply rotation. Control A, apply rotation. So we have something like this, and there's still a gap in between. So what you can do is you can select these two cubes, switch to edit mode, select everything by pressing A, move it along z-axis by pressing G and Z till we get something like this. Yeah, switch back to object mode, and let's rename these two instance cubes. And let's start replicating this in our other edges. And if at all you're not happy with this random value, you can change the seed in one of these edges till we get something like this. And let's start applying this to our wall edges as well. So before that, we need to duplicate this cube again to use it in our walls. Switch back to edit mode and make sure these vertices are in a straight line, something like this, and select everything and move it down a little. And switch back to object mode, rename this as well to something called wall cube, and we can use these to instance in our other edges. So create a new geometry node, select this one, create a duplicate, and change this rotation to 0 and select our new instance cube. And this looks good. And we can start replicating this to our other edges as well. Let's go to wall right, copy this and select the same geometry node that we used for the other wall. And let's hide these cubes, go to the left back wall. Okay, let me select the other geometry node. With this selected, okay, I can see the cubes overlapping with each other. For this, I think we can adjust the scale within the geometry nodes, change this x and y value to something around 0.09 or 0.08. This looks good, but it also changes the scale of the other wall. Let's fix this first. Let's set it to 0.08 and let's duplicate this. This also missed this value, so let's select this wall and set it to 1. Let's do the same thing to our other edges. Select the geometry node, click on the new geometry node that we created. We have one that is not being used by anything, so Let's go to File, Clean Up, and recursively remove unused blocks, and that geometry node is gone. So this will reduce the confusion a bit. Let's do the same process for the other two edges as well till we have something like this. And we can increase the length a little by changing this to max value till you get something that you're happy with. Something like this. And let's create a new collection. Let's call it scene. And before this, I think we can duplicate it. Let me see. Let's duplicate this along. Let's move this along x-axis, but no mind. First, let me duplicate this and move that duplicate along x-axis. Yeah. With that, I'll select all the edges that are in the center and move them to this new collection. And I can go and start applying geometry nodes. So click on that, go to geometry nodes, and click on this arrow and select apply. There must be an easy way to apply all the geometry nodes, but for now let's do this individually. With all the geometry nodes applied, I can select all these edges and right click and join them into a single object. And this is how it looks. And let's add a little HDRI lighting by going to the world tab and clicking on the color and select environment texture, and you can download any HDRIs from online, and I usually use HDRI Haven or Polyhaven to get my HDRIs. Let me select this for the scene and let me go to render settings, and under film check this transparent, so we just have the lighting in our scene. And let's add a new material for this cube. Let me go to shading tab. I don't need these two areas as well. I'll just go collapse these and these. Bring switch back. And let's start by adding a color ramp. And let's add a texture coordinate node. And if you have node wrangler enabled, you can just press Ctrl T by selecting color ramp. That would give you these two nodes. Let's plug in generator to the mapping node, and we need another separate XYZ node in between. Let's add that and map this to this and Z to the color ramp, and this color to the principal BSDF node. And with that, we can see a gradient from the bottom to top. Let's add another color in between, but I wanted to go from top to bottom, so let me go to the color ramp and flip the color ramp. Yeah, and we can select any color that we want. So with this handle selected, click on this and change it to any color that you want. I'll select this red color, something like this. Yeah, select the middle handle and select some kind of orange, and the last handle, and I'll select an yellow. Great. This is what we have. Switching to render mode, and this is how it looks. And let's create the door for this house by adding a cube, and let me bring this down, bring this a little forward in y-axis, scale it along x-axis to something like this. Let us align with the ridges that we have, so it is a little easier for the boolean modifier. Something like this. And with this, select the cube and go to the object tab, and under viewport display, change it to wire. It doesn't work in the render view, so I'll switch to solid the shading view and select this to wireframe again. With this, select the house, go to the modifiers panel, add a new boolean modifier, and under difference, use this picker to select the cube, and it doesn't work. Let me change other options. This has to be fast. Yeah. Now we have the door. I can scale this a little more to something like this. Yep. And we can go ahead and apply this modifier as well. And I can hide this because we can reuse this cube if at all we need it. I'll rename this to door cube. Hide it. And this looks great. Going back to the render view, and this is how it looks. We can keep duplicating it as many times as we want, and that is how I made this artwork.